Welcome to Photoshop Killer Tips, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. Here's your host, Matt Kloskowski.
Let's say that you wanted to decrease the opacity of a mask. It sounds a little bit weird, but kind of bear with me for a second because this actually can be very useful at times. So here's my mask on this hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, remember there's a tip which I gave earlier in this layer mask tips week where if you hold down the shift key and you click on the mask, it turns it off. All right, so there's no mask, so all we're seeing is the hue saturation adjustment I've given this. This is the photo before, this is it after, so it's kind of just turned everything to a different type of a hue. Now, what I did here is, let me shift click again, so I added a mask so that hue saturation adjustment only affects this drink right here, so it turns it from blue to green. Okay, well, here's the tip. So let's say I wanted to decrease the opacity of this mask. And I still want to keep the drink green, but I want to start to bring in the rest of that hue saturation adjustment. Well, if I decrease the opacity of the layer itself, it's just changing the drink, and that's not what I'm looking for. What you can do, and you can do this two different ways. In CS4, there's a masks panel. All right, so I click on the mask, I go to my masks panel, and I can decrease the density. And that's essentially the opacity of that layer mask. So watch what happens. All right, the drink stays exactly the same. If you look at the mask itself, you'll see the drink stays white, okay? And as I decrease it, the rest of the layer becomes close to white as well. All right, until I get all the way down to 0, which basically means that there is no mask on here. It's just like we hid the mask earlier. Okay, so it's kind of like opacity on a mask. Now, you don't have to do it this way. If you have a version of Photoshop before CS4, or you just like to know a little bit of how this ticks, what you can do is remember the other tip, Option or Alt click on your mask. That brings us into the mode where we can see the mask. Then open up levels. All right, and all you've got to do is tweak this little output levels down here. And it's basically doing the same thing. It's taking your black, it's turning it to gray, more gray, eventually until it turns it all the way white. But that's another way to get in there and to actually change the opacity of a mask instead of having to go in there and paint everything with a brush. It's a lot easier this way.